Welcome back to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Today we're finally doing another episode of our villain series where we look at an individual from history or one from the present, which wasn't really fair to him, and we look at whether or not he ended up being a hero or a villain or somewhere in between. And we always give in these series, we always give leniency to have a redemption arc. Now, if you never have a redemption arc, then you end up in the gutter. But you can be terrible. Like, if we were to do one on Jimmy Carter, we would do it about how terrible and just all the terrible things he did in Indonesia. But then we would say afterwards, all the humanitarian stuff, was it enough? We would break it all down and assess it, you know? And so this one, we're doing it on Winston Churchill. And this one's a hard one, though, because instead of making this episode like 2.5 hours long or just whatever, you know, we've prepared for this by doing episode after episode after episode on earlier topics so that we could tie it all together. Now, it's not going to make a lot of sense to you if you haven't been watching the channel for a while and you haven't seen those old episodes, or if you won't just take my brief synopsis that I'm going to give you in this episode, unless you just want to go watch them, because they're all going to be linked in the description below in chronological order as we go through things. Okay. So the first point of this we're going to talk about is, the catastrophe at Gallipoli. And we have a whole episode on this, so I'm not going to go into it too deep. You've either seen it or you haven't, or you trust me or you don't. You're welcome to go watch it again. Victor's in it. It's great. Well, it's great because Victor's in it. Anyways, and you can see our really, really old sets in some of these too. Anyways, so basically the story is World War I story, and he's in charge of a fleet. He makes terrible decisions, gets 45,000 soldiers dead for nothing, for no reason. It's not large, as we talk about in the episode, in the amount of how many millions of soldiers died during that war, but it was a superb waste of time. And 45,000 parents, 90,000 parents, if that's the case, if all their parents are still alive, are just sitting there like, why did my kids die? We hate Winston Churchill because he's incompetent. You could see the exact details of that if you watch that episode. Even till the very end, he would have people come up to him and say, we'll never forget Gallipoli. We'll never forget. He would have all the way to the end. So he started out as a complete failure, basically. He rose to that position, so he wasn't failing. But then when he got there at the crux, at the crucial point, and then he completely failed. So then he got completely ousted, and now he's out of government and stuff like that. He's got this big estate, though. So that's the first link below. And that episode's only 9 minutes long if you want to check it out. And then the next thing is in the interwar period. Now, I had made a mistake somewhere in here where I had said that he had been forging paintings in the interwar period. I could not find that as, I could not corroborate that. So I take that back because I just can't prove it. So I take that back. I also take back the thing the quote that I attributed to him that said that we slaughtered the wrong pig, or we stuck the wrong pig, which was fighting Germany instead of the USSR, because I also couldn't corroborate that, to be honest. So I'm pulling both of those back. So then the next episode I want to refer to is the group who bought Winston Churchill. Second link below. And it's this group called the Force, and you can see the terrible breakdown of that acronym. And basically what it was is a predominantly Jewish group with predominantly Jewish interests. Now, remember, there's no Israel. So we're talking about World Jewry, the Samuel Untermyer guys behind it, who was the guy behind the Judea declares war on Germany thing. And so basically what they did as he was so destitute, right? Winston Churchill, that his entire estate was up for sale, and they pulled him back from the ravine. They let him pay his debts. He took this estate off the market, his family estate. And basically what they wanted for him he was not anti-German, and they just will buy you. And the first was 50,000 pounds. You can watch all about it in the episode. I got all the names of the people behind it, this and that, all the amounts and stuff like that. And basically they just bought the man, and they bought him to take a country, Britain, who did not want to go to war with Germany, who was not even anti-German at the time, surprisingly, right? And to get them against their will to go to war against Germany. So they bought him to do this. It's not all Jews. This is a specific group. I named the specific players. That episode's 14 minutes long. Victor's in it. It's good. It's interesting. I don't hear anybody talking about this. Very fascinating. Okay. So the Gallipoli thing is not super important in my evaluation of this man, because really it matters what he did during World War II. Because after World War II, he didn't do a whole lot. He wrote the books. I read the books. They're great. I mean, they're very fascinating books. But he didn't make a big impact after that. So it's all going to come down to World War II. Is he going to pull it out of the bag or is he not? And so I'm going to stress some key points here that I think are extremely relevant in our determination of whether this guy was a villain or a hero. Number one, well, this will be the third link below, and it's an episode called What Really Happened? How Did World War II Start? I know it's stupid that it says that because I used to put what really happened in the title, even just because it's part of the What Really Happened series, and now I don't do that anymore. I just drop it in the series and just use the name. It's How Did World War II Start? Now, this is 34 minutes long. Victor's in this. And the key point here is this. And we go through this in depth. I enjoyed watching it, honestly, watching it back. And basically the key point is this. When Hitler got the Munich Pact, which was appeasement, and it gave him the Sudetenland, which encompassed the mountains north of Czechoslovakia with the 25 fortresses that they had built. And he then violated the Munich Pact. I don't know why, and I explained it. I just don't know why. And then he took Czechoslovakia. They had big munitions factories, but that's not exactly why. He said there was discrimination against his Germans there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So now they made the Defense Pact where if Poland was attacked, France would attack Germany from the west, and the British Expeditionary Force would put boots on the ground in Poland. And so what happened? There was massive discrimination against ethnic Germans in the Free City of Danzig, which is a contested area that had been given to Poland after World War I. There were 80,000 Germans in refugee camps at the time because they were being so discriminated against. They were locked in their church, 300 plus of them were locked in their church while they were at church, and the whole thing was burnt down. Like the movie about the revolution with, what is it called? I can't remember. With Mel Gibson. The Patriot. Great movie. That happened in there with the English doing that. That's not really historical, I don't believe. But in this case, it is historical. And so basically, Hitler then invaded. He called them all night, and then he invaded Poland. Now that officially started the war the World War II, because Britain then had to declare war on Germany. France had to declare war on Germany. Britain did not send the British Expeditionary Force to help at all. They completely violated it. They just wanted war with Germany. They did not want to help Poland. They wanted an excuse not to be a belligerent and to get war with Germany. And the British didn't want it. Churchill wanted it because he was bought, right? And they could, because Hitler didn't attack the Free City of Danzig, he went straight for Warsaw. That means their only port on the Baltic was open, and the British Expeditionary Force could have landed there to reinforce the Polish. Didn't. The French in the west marched towards the Siegfried Line in the west of Germany, and then they just turned around and went home. So So my point here about World War II starting is that Churchill was a complete scumbag in this scenario. In this scenario, because he was paid to do it, he started a fake war with Germany that they were not going to fight with Poland. And after Poland fell in, was it 26 or 28 days? About a month. And then the next 9-month period is called the phony war, the fake war, right? Because they weren't directly fighting each other. There was stuff in Denmark, Norway, but there was not direct fighting. And so they totally lied to Poland and tricked Poland into, because if they wouldn't have tricked Poland into doing that treaty, Poland would have woke up in the middle of the night. If at 11:59 Ribbentrop's calling your minister on the phone saying, you need to talk to me now. It's 11:59 night. I know you need to talk to me now. And they're like, no. He's busy. He's sleeping. He's sleeping comfortably because he knows the British Expeditionary Force and the French have his back, and the Germans won't do anything. And even Hitler was surprised when they went through with the pact and declared war on him, because it's just the whole thing's so stupid. You would have to be bought by a foreign group representing a small amount of people, like the Force, which we covered in the previous episode. So this goes to his disfavor. This third link below. Now, the fourth link below, and this is important when we judge whether Winston Churchill was a good guy or not, is the episode that we made called Hitler Offered 16 Peace Treaties. It's a question mark. So Hitler offered 16 peace treaties, right? And now I have read some of the Hitler-Hess deception, which is where I got the information for this from. And the number 16 isn't accurate. It's more like 20 or 21, depending on how you calculate it. And there were more overtures made after that, because the last one was him sending his vice Führer to England with the peace deal and then disavowing it. And so after they imprisoned him for his peace mission, And so there were overtures made through back channels, even through the U.S. and stuff after that, but they weren't official offers, and they didn't have the bullet points in them of what we want, what we'll give you, et cetera, et cetera. And so anyways, this is an interesting episode because Hitler tried for peace so many times. Okay, like just, it's 14 minutes long. I recommend you listen to it if you don't know that story. If you do, forget it. But like in it, I say the first peace treaty, you know what day it was? September 2nd, 1939. Do you know what day the war started? September 1st, 1939. They were a few kilometers into Poland, and they were, well, it was a full 24 hours later because they started at 12:01 a.m. So they were kilometers inside, but they were already doing peace. After Hitler captured France, he offers Britain peace. He says, I'll just give back all of France, and I list the treaty deals in there, and Victor, even in the episode, he's like, this sounds freaking amazing. Why wouldn't you take this deal? And the Wehrmacht will fight for you anywhere in the world that the British just need help and stuff like that. Anyway, so at this point, when we're looking at Winston Churchill, is he a good guy or bad guy? He starts with a negative in Gallipoli in World War I, right? Scumbag, he's sold his honor in between the wars. Gets into a war through a scummy way where he just completely fails a partner and just lets them get wrecked. Because then, if you hate Hitler, then 2/3 of them are under Hitler control, and that's a bad thing for Poland. If you hate communists, 1/3 of them was under communist control, and that's a bad thing for them. So it depends if you hate the people who love families, or if you hate the people who hate religious people, whatever. You know what I mean? So there's nobody who should be happy with that scenario. You should be for or against one of those sides. Well, I guess there's a bunch of people who don't know about history and they're against both those sides. Okay, now. And then you're stuck in the situation where you're in a war. You got your country into a war that your country does not want to be in. The people of your country do not want to be in. And then you've denied really good peace officers from the other side all the way up until 41. I'm sorry. Okay. Is he going to have a redemption arc? We'll see. Next episode. So this would be number 5. And this is called What Really Happened to Germany or Britain Bomb Cities First. It's 16 minutes long. I recommend you watch it. If you think that Germany was bombing British cities before Britain was bombing German cities, you have to see it. Because in it, I go to a speech Hitler did, and he said, we've let them bomb our city for months and months. It was 3 months they let them bomb their cities for. Hamburg, all these cities, they just let them bomb them because he was sure he could get peace. He was sure. He was the peace guy. It's freaking insane. Adolf Hitler was the peace guy, and he was sure he could get peace. And then finally, he's like, enough is enough. He's like, they bombed our cities for months and months and months. He's like, now every time they bomb us with 1 kilogram, we're going to do 100 kilograms. And he goes, and I literally read you the speech. I've got a reference to the speech. You can listen to him say the speech if you want to. Like, this is legit. And I didn't know this, though, most of my life, because when I was in early college, I got interested in World War II, and I read Winston Churchill's 6-book series, The Second Great War. And in it, he talks about how Germany bombed their cities first. He says it was an accident. He said it was, they had so Germany was bombing at night because you would have less loss of your bombers due to, fighters picking you off. Because the fighters have the advantage of they have tons of fuel compared to the bombers who you get over there and you have, 17 minutes to handle your stuff, and you have to be headed home or you will run out of fuel and dump in the channel, But the fighters can take off and, they got more versatility. So you do it at nighttime, and they put diversionary fires. And so then they didn't think that was a real fire. And then they started bombing over here, which lit the city on fire. And so then they just kept all their bombers went. This is Winston Churchill's story. This is not the truth, because there's no way Hitler can pull off this speech. 90 days we've let them bomb us if they had been bombing them for all that time. You know what I mean? Like, it just, anyways. And then I explain in the episode how Britain, their historians have lied, and they've made it into 2 different events. There's the Battle of Britain, and then there's the Blitz, and the Blitz is when the Germans start bombing them. And they've basically separated, whereas in German history, it's one whole thing because, Britain was just bombing them the whole time. So the British are the scumbags who bombed cities for 90 days before their cities got bombed. That's a thing that happened. And I have no respect for people attacking civilians. I have no respect. Like, there's no claims that either Russia or Ukraine is just mass murdering civilians. Now, civilians do die, and that's a tragedy. And that always does happen in war, But it should be avoided as much as possible. And I have no respect for countries who don't take care to protect the civilians. I don't care if they look like you. I don't care if they're the same color. The eyes are slanted the same way. I don't really care, Don't do it in Laos. Don't do it in Vietnam. I mean, the amount of bombs we dropped over there. Anyways, so I think a scumbag for that, Winston Churchill. And then the war proceeds. And when you really look at it, like, England didn't really do anything great in the war. If you really look at it, like, Normandy was the U.S., there were battles in Western Europe, the Battle of the Bulge and stuff, and it was mostly the U.S. The Soviets, who I'm no fan of, but they turned it around at Stalingrad. They really did that. They buckled down. They strategy. They had their artillery across the river. They trapped them in there. They got them to surrender. Hitler told them to fight the last man. This was a big turning point in the war. And so Britain, I don't have a lot to applaud Britain for. They did good in North Africa. You know what I mean? And that mattered. They did good at sea. They did good at sea. But like, they kept the war going for a really long time is what they did. They maintained and stayed in there, which was a ballsy thing to do. I'll give them credit for that. But as far as doing really great stuff, they didn't do great stuff. So I'm going to cover one more event of World War II, and that's the Dresden bombing. And we did an episode on it. It's 11 minutes long. Victor's in it. If you haven't seen it, it's the sixth link below. And basically, it's a ridiculous story because I go into making this and I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to say it's terrorism. I'm going to say that was just to terrorize the civilians, that it was only civilian targets. They targeted this and that. And then I go to do the research for the episode and I look up this history.com article and it's like, oh, it says they admit everything that I was going to say. I was going to find the, was it really? Was it really? And they literally just say all the things. It's a fascinating episode. I even forgot it until I watched it the other day. But they say the specific purpose of it was terrorism against the civilian populations. It was all targeting civilians. And there's this story in there where some American POWs are talking about it. And then the sirens go off and the German soldiers are like, quick, take them 2 stories down to the meat locker because we're going to protect these American POWs because you can't let the POWs get injured. They're in your custody. You know what I mean? That they don't get to take their wives down there. They have to take these Americans down there because that's the honorable thing to do, of course, And the article just admits everything. And then they say, oh, okay, so basically 150 to 200,000 people died there, right? Which is the number from all the way as long as the 1960s. And then in the 2000s, they were like, this could be used as propaganda for like, I don't know, like nationalists or like supremacists. So we're going to restudy it and figure out what the actual number is. And they come out with like 27,500 people died or something. They specifically tell you that they're going to lower the number because it looks bad for their side and could be used as propaganda by nationalists, which means just the truth. Nationalists telling the truth, or whoever, Anyways, it was a massive war crime. There were so many war crimes that happened on all sides. Because when I'm just judging Winston Churchill right here, I could judge Hitler and things he did. I could judge the Japanese, just the things they did to China. I mean, you could judge the U.S. for the things they did just to Japan, or you could look over here too at the bombing of the cities and stuff like that, because the U.S. was prominent in the Dresden bombing as well. That doesn't go solely to the Brits, but since it's happening from British, airfields, Britain could have stopped it. So even if the U.S. just had wanted to do it and Britain didn't want to do it. So anyways, basically, obviously the conclusion is that this guy is an absolute scumbag, right? So here's what you would have to say that he was a good dude, right? You would have to say that Adolf Hitler was so evil and the Germans all were so evil and it was so important to defeat him that all these war crimes and atrocity and getting his country into a war that they didn't want to go into, which takes away all their self-determination and sovereignty, then pushing through the war as the guy who's the most evilest person on the planet is just trying to get peace because he's a peace guy. And you would have to just believe all of this stuff, and Germany started bombing the cities and they deserved Dresden. All those civilians, they deserved it. Did they deserve all the grapes by the, Soviets and all that, all the women and stuff like that? Anyways, if you have a good knowledge of history, Winston Churchill was a terrible, terrible dude. He was an absolute scumbag. Oh, let me fix one more thing about him. There was this story, let me think, it was at Yalta, and it's this story that gets told wrong. Okay. Yeah. Now, this is in Winston Churchill's favor, but I've heard the story told falsely where and I don't have a reference for this. I'll probably get a reference for it. I will. I promise you get a reference for this, and I'll put it as the first reference below because all those episodes are in links. In reference, there'll be one reference, and I'll reference you an article about this. But there's this story at Yalta where, I don't know, Winston Churchill supposedly said something really evil about the Germans, and he's just a scumbag, right? And but the story's not that. It's that he says, Stalin says something to the effect of like, let's butcher the Germans, like man, woman, child, something, and then Winston Churchill says, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should just treat them halfway decently. Maybe that is a good idea after we've completely beat them, And what is it? FDR's, is it his son, Elliot? He's so furious, he gets up to storm out to leave because, and he didn't even say anything pro-German, Churchill. He just said something like with a decent amount of humanity, And so then I want to correct that story because if you've ever heard the wrong version of that, this is not attributing anything bad to Winston Churchill. It's attributing bad things to Stalin, obvious, and then to the Roosevelts. I'm surprised that, Churchill would say this. Maybe he had drank too much that day. And the drinking thing, they say he was a drunk, but there's not really evidence of that. There's evidence that he's very functional, right? And so if you drink every day and you're very functional, you can't say, oh, that guy's just a drunk. Like everything he does, he ruins. But if he's functional, then you have to just judge him on the merits of what he does. So I will give this one thing in his favor. I think in general, he was a scumbag, which I had alluded to in other episodes that this was the conclusion I was going to come to. I would have had to found something fantastic in his favor. Okay, so how about this? If you disagree with me, put it in the comments below. I would love to go back and forth with you on that. If I missed a major event that makes this an unfair evaluation of Churchill, put that in the comments or send me an email. I'm interested and I'll respond. And if you're like being serious, if you're just, berating my stupidity or something, I'm just going to ignore it. And I don't mind, just do whatever you want. Okay, so I'm done with that. Now I'm doing the new thing where at the end of episodes, I talk about just some interesting fact, that I've been thinking about that'll never make a full episode. This one I want to talk about situation brewing in Venezuela because I have an insight into this, okay? So we've got 8,000 troops, like down there in the boats, and we sent boats down there and we're blowing up Venezuela drug ships, but they're on speeder boats and they're 2,000 kilometers away, so they're not bringing drugs here, and we're just blowing up boats. No due process. Some people say some civilians were on this one. I don't know what's true or not, and then they're basically posturing like we need to invade Venezuela because, I don't know, it's like 9% of our fentanyl comes from there. They're destroying our country, clearly. You know what I mean? They're just destroying it. Is like 7% or 9% comes from Venezuela. This is catastrophic, And so the situation is so absurd. And you're looking at it and you're like, what's going on? This is the he ran on anti-war. Like, what's going on here? I've got an idea what's going on here. Okay. So imagine this. Marco Rubio's behind this, obviously. He's very, very powerful. He's a complete and total neocon. He should not be in Trump's administration if Trump had planned to stick to what he said he was going to do. Because you just don't bring neocons on. Just don't do that. Trump's praised him, this, that. Well, we know that Marco Rubio has a personal agenda to do a regime change in Venezuela. So we know this is a thing. But how do we get from him wanting to as Secretary of State to this happening? Here's my theory, just all conjecture here. He goes to Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth is in the Department of War, his own terminology, right? And so he goes to him and says, Pete, look, do you know what I've realized? I've realized that we do not know what the United States of America's warfighting capability is. We got all these millions of drones that we bought, and we haven't tested them on live targets. Like, we haven't tested them under extreme conditions, right? Here's what the United States needs if the United States is going to survive. Because if we get into war with China, we will not survive unless this happens. We need to find a soft target. We need to go in there. We need to test our warfighting capability. We need to test out these drones because it could be that those 2.2 million bomber drones that we got from this company don't function under bad circumstances. And we need to scrap that entire line or return them or whatever. We need to go with these other ones. And we need to know this now. So what we need is a really soft target. We need somewhere we can go in there, not too much bloodshed on the American side. We can achieve a goal, which is the end of the drug trafficking, because, 7% of our drugs or 9% of our fentanyl comes from there, And then, of course, Pete Hegseth, who wants to be at war, the Department of War he wants to do, is like, well, I guess we have to, right? So Marco Rubio's getting his Venezuela thing. Then they both go to the president and pitch it, like national security. Like, even though American soldiers will die, not a lot of them, American soldiers will die on the ground there. We need this in case we go to war with China and our warfighting capability is not up to date. We need to test out all of our newest weapons. We need to do this, and we need to do them under battlefield conditions. This is my theory. It makes sense what I'm saying, because there's no reason to be messing with Venezuela. There's no reason. It's a minor part of our drug stuff. With the illegal immigration, yeah, he should be messing with that, and he is. And that's completely separate than the 8,000 troops. They say they've armed like a 4.5 million person militia, but then they don't let their people have guns. So like, this is a real story that's happening, you know, and it's amping up on both sides. And you're like, what the heck's going on? It's against everything in Trump's, but maybe they're telling them it's for the national security of the United States, but it's always for the national security of the United States. You know, protecting Israel, they always say, is the national security of the United States. Don't believe them if it's not actually protecting the national security of the United States. And I'm just sorry, you can't. What if it would save the United States? What if the United States is going to go to China in 8 years, and if we don't go into Venezuela now, we will lose against China, right? Can you still start a fake war here? Do you have the moral weakness to start a war here, send people's children to die for a war that doesn't even matter, just in case it might help in some future war? I think it's a scummy move. It's against all of Trump's stuff. We'll see how it turns out, because I'm not going to degrade him for this until he actually does something. Anyways, but I just want to make you aware of the situation and my little theory. I'm interested in hearing what you guys got in the comments on this one too. And that's all I got for you. Hope to see you guys next week. Have a great weekend.